Good evening and welcome to Healing Quest. I'm Lisa Zaffer and we are here tonight to help you on your path to health. Tonight we're delighted to welcome Margaret Biskowski, a Reiki master who has studied Reiki for 11 years, and she's here to share her knowledge with you tonight. Welcome.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Lisa.
Now, Margaret, I understand that there are many different forms of Reiki, and you are particularly interested in discussing Usui Reiki. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, that's true. Reiki, the term Reiki means universal light force energy, and Usui Reiki is a form of that method. And it originated it's named after a gentleman named Mikao Usui, and he went on a quest for Reiki in the early 1800s, and he had brought it to the United States towards the late 1800s. And so Usui is his last name, and he was the one who developed that particular art form of Reiki, and there are different variations, and that is the particular field that I'd studied.
Okay. And I understand that the chakras are particularly focused on in this. Could you explain a little bit about what the chakras are and how they function in healing?
Sure. Reiki is a universal light force energy, and then you have 7 main chakra points in your body, and each chakra has a specific function and a correlation. For example, you have a crown chakra, a third eye, a throat chakra, heart chakra, a will chakra, and you have a sexual chakra and a root chakra. And each of them are chakras, and they are independent and interdependent in the body. And they have a very specific function. They should be, well, part of the training is learning how to sense a chakra, which is energy. How does one energy can be such a vague term, Part of being trained as a practitioner is sort of learning how to make it tangible. Chakras generally are about 1.5 inches off your body. They should be approximately this large in size, in theory, functioning in a clockwise direction away from the body. Again, they have specific functions. So, for example, the most common thing that I see as a practitioner, you go and you check people's chakras and you're working with that and you're opening it and you want it to be in that sort of ideal mode, which would be, again, this like almost a perfect circle functioning in clockwise direction. If it's contorted in any way, there is a symptom in that particular chakra, and it's related to the spot on the body.
Okay, so how do you work with the chakras as a Reiki master?
You try and manipulate the chakra. You basically try and open it, sense it, and give it your analysis based on it. Based on color, shape, they can indicate what's going on, and, the levels of sickness that the person is dealing with, basically.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you assess a person and how you identify what chakras they need to work with? Okay.
This is, I can only really talk about my experience with this. Generally, what happens is somebody will come into my office and I will talk to them, and I do sort of an interview with the client, the person who's coming to see me, and I don't always work with people that come to see me, because I really believe that your practitioner has to be a good match for the client. It's a relationship that's established. So there's sort of a vibe, and you can tell if you sort of mesh with the person or not, or if the person meshes with me or not. And it's a very sacred process, in my opinion. In most practitioners' Reiki practitioner opinions. So basically you kind of go through an interviewing process just to get a feel, and when I mean interviewing process, the person, you find out why are they coming to see you, what's going on in their life, where are they in their life. You try and get an idea, and if somebody has symptoms, for example, they're complaining about like a lower back, or they have a repetitive injury or chronic pain, an issue that keeps coming up, we steer the conversation, because it's the belief of an energy worker, and it's my belief that a physical symptom is the last thing to occur in the body. You're going to have an energetic symptom before you have a physical symptom, and that's usually the difference between Eastern and Western medicine. And there's and there's a huge distinction between Eastern and Western medicine. Obviously, like, I'm not an MD. Eastern practitioners are not medical physicians, you know, so I don't guide anyone or pretend to be a medical physician. You know, and that's made pretty clear also from the get-go. But it is our experience that it's usually an emotional or a spiritual ailment that has positioned itself to manifest physically on somebody or take the form of a physical manifestation. It's never alone the physical symptom.
So if someone comes to you before it's manifested as a physical symptom, you could actually alleviate or avoid the development.
Yeah,
that's
great. Been our experience with it.
Sounds very rewarding. What are the other benefits of Reiki?
Yeah, what are the benefits of it? Benefits of Reiki. There are so many benefits to getting Reiki done. One of the simplest things, you know, we just talked about sort of extreme examples. One of the basic, simple things, a lot of people do it to relax, to calm, to connect. It's a form of meditating, to connecting with your body. Reiki isn't for everybody, you know. It's for people who are geared towards a mind, body, spirit connection, or the people who are going to come to me or go and seek other practitioners out. It's so you're never really battling with trying to deal with someone's belief system in the sense of, do they lead a spiritual life? Not that that's necessarily a prerequisite, but those are the people who seem to be attracted to such healing art forms in some way. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a magic wand and a fix and a cure, it's not for you. Because you're sort of, I'm sorry, there's really no quick fix to problems. You know, I mean, some things can be fixed, you know, more readily available than others. Let's say, you know, like calm. Somebody who's anxiety-ridden, you know, that's something that would benefit from that. Somebody that would benefit from getting Reiki done, you know, the soothing energy work. But again, people who are looking for a quick fix, it would not be beneficial. So, and there are some other symptoms that occur. I've had people who've actually reported their symptoms have increased in a negative way. For example, somebody came in, had a fever, a runny nose. Their fever totally spiked that night, but it dissipated the next day. So, I mean,
so it gets
it's
worse.
It's not necessarily, I've seen it get worse before it's gotten better.
Okay.
You know.
So that's not something to be afraid of?
No, it's not something to be afraid of. And again, if it lasts, I'm not a physician, you know, you should obviously, somebody should go and see their doctor if that continues to happen, but it's not uncommon. So
the effects aren't usually immediate, or does it just depend on the situation? Just want to make
it
sure
depends
I
on the
understand.
situation.
Okay.
It totally depends. One of the things to sort of dissipate that you're going to get sort of an immediate effect for would be an injury of some kind. It's pretty easy. I've seen great results with people who have injuries. You know, I had a woman who had thrown her back out and we'd worked on it, and she'd felt immediate relief, you know, by the time the session was done, and it just kind of escalates.
Now,
yes and no, it just depends. It depends on the client.
Okay. So now, is there anything a client can do to prepare themselves for it or to help the treatment be more effective? Or if a client is somewhat resistant or hesitant, does that affect the treatment?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Willingness, you know, to listen to alternative ways of handling a situation is definitely going to improve the situation. Again, somebody who's seeking my services out is generally familiar with what it is that I do. And that, again, it's not always the case. And people just sometimes want to try it just to see if they can feel it, or if, you know, what is it like. But for more optimal results for a treatment, it's having an open mind to try different ways of going about a situation.
Okay.
And generally, because that's a lot of times what it comes down to, is also half of it's counseling, half of it's, you know, body work.
Now, I know you said that the training is quite different than Western training. What kind of qualifications do you have, and what should you look for when you're looking for a Reiki therapist?
That's a great question. I started training when I was a teenager. I trained for 5 years under a woman who is also a Reiki master practitioner. And generally how it goes is that a master has to teach you you know, so you can't, there are 3 levels, and after you get your 3rd level, you have to practice for a while before you can be considered like a master teacher. I studied under for her for several years, and then I had clients or customers that I was seeing, and then she let me know when I was ready to start teaching. But that took about 5 to 7 years before that had happened.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had trained exclusively under her. The tradition is such that I have my certifications, you know, and it's important to know if you have, some states require a minister's license. It just depends where you are.
So do
Yeah.
you currently train other Reiki students
I
who
do.
are not yet masters? Okay. Could you
do.
tell us a little about the different stages and how long it takes to progress?
Sure.
Okay.
How do I train somebody? There are classes that people take, and you have to practice and kind of learn the hand positions and learn what's involved with Reiki, the philosophy, build your intuition, you know, because there are some things that come into play other than, you know, hands-on healing, like extra tools. And then you have to kind of establish your art form, you know, within the guidelines also. And then a master, how do you train as a master? There's symbols involved. There's a lot involved. There's a lot of training involved and a lot of exploring, and it's a personal journey. So there's a lot of work that has to happen. But there are classes and there are degrees that one takes.
Okay.
And to really become, I would say, a good master teacher would be a minimum of 5 years. You know, after seeing people and, you know,
To get the
to get the whole master teacher, because, you know, you really have to apply and integrate your philosophies, and, you know, you receive intuitive direction, and
Right.
you have to be able to channel that and execute that.
So could you walk us through a typical session so that we would know what to expect if we were to come to you?
Sure. Again, somebody would come in and we would interview them. I would do a body scan on the person, meaning that I would check how their chakras were functioning, and then I would proceed to go ahead and do body work. Body work being that I would address their feet, and this is my style, and this is sort of a different variation of Reiki, but this is what I've incorporated. I work with feet in terms of reflexology, and I work with a lot of chi energy, and then I also check the chakras, and I open them, and then I also do a color therapy, because they are color coordinated.
What does that mean?
So each chakra has a corresponding color for its vibration.
Oh, okay.
So you kind of send it to that specific chakra, and you try and open it and clean it and get the energy flowing in the body so it's not stagnant and it's moving and flowing. You want to make sure that like you're rooted, that's like your lower chakra. And again, everything has specific functions. So for example, somebody who's constantly running around scatterbrained, you know, the root function is literally their grounding to the earth. You know, that would, if they were telling me I'm running around all the time, I'm forgetting things, blah, 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 you know, and they were on and on, one of the first places I would go to would be to look at the root chakra, you know, to see if the energy is pulled, is it functioning in the way that it should be functioning.
That's
so,
very
yeah,
interesting.
depending on the information they give me initially, those are the areas that I target first to examine what the issue is.
Okay. And how often should somebody come to you, say they had a physical ailment versus an emotional ailment? Is there a typical regime, or is it?
It totally depends. It totally depends. Sometimes 3 times, sometimes it needs to be 8 times, 9 times, and then I spread it out, you know, to see. A couple times it'll be, you know, every week, and then every 3 weeks, and then I try and spread it out. But I let the person know who comes to see me right away what the treatment plan is, you know, so they can say, this is for me, this is not for me.
Okay. So now that you are a master, is there anything you do to strengthen your skills once you are a master? Continuing education?
Yeah,
or?
basically continuing education. I have 2 teachers that I still, you know, answer to. I've been training in the ministry for a while also in Indiana, and it's an ongoing process, and I'm always trying to try different techniques to, you know, to better myself as a practitioner. You never just sort of sit and rest.
I think it's very interesting to have you here tonight, because I know from personal experience, when my mom had cancer, we went to a Reiki therapist. She thought she was going for a massage, and the woman was able to identify everywhere in her body where it was located. And it just really opened my eyes up to Eastern medicine and how it works, because we're, you know, at least myself growing up here, you're so used to thinking Western and just diagnosing symptoms, and the mind-body connection is really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree also. It's, and actually how she was able to diagnose that was when the body's injured, it emits heat. So you can detect immediately where in the body, you know, and you're trained to sort of read that and how to read energy.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So I believe that the body has answers for us. You know, discovering ourselves, discovering our higher selves, discovering our communication, our relationship with the universe, or whatever it is that we're connected to, whatever is our guiding force, I believe is revealed in us, you know.
Now, is there anyone that you wouldn't recommend Reiki for, or do you think people who already feel imbalanced should go just...
I think that if somebody has, again, it depends. It's hard to just sort of give a blanket statement, you know.
Right.
I think that somebody who has, you know, if all they had were back pains, there would be a certain point where I couldn't help them. I would probably ask them to go see a chiropractor. You know, if they were throwing their back out, or if it was a sports injury. Some things are better suited for different practitioners, you know. And if somebody were to walk in, you know, I would never take somebody who was in certain stages of cancer without them seeing a doctor as well, you know. So and that's the nice thing about Reiki. It's a complementary thing, you know. It doesn't interfere with the treatment that you're doing. You know, it can work in conjunction with acupuncture, anything that you're doing. It's a non-invasive technique, but it would depend. It would depend. If I think that there was somebody who was more effective for that person, I would let them know.
Okay. So where can we go to sign up or to meet you? And
I'm located at Healing Quest, you know, so you can find me there, I know, at www.healingquest.com, I think.
HealingQuestCenter.com?
Yeah, sorry, healingquestcenter.com.
Okay.
And okay, there's the number, so there's more information available, and I'm there. You can my name's Margaret, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about different experiences you've had, or?
Different experiences I've had. There's been so many experiences that I've had.
Like, what is your typical client who comes in?
A typical client. People who are fatigued and stressed and who are anxious would be the typical people that I see.
Okay. And they're able to get more in balance?
Yeah, definitely. It's so funny, we were talking about this earlier. I really don't believe in the word balance. I don't think it's possible to have balance. I believe that everyone has their own natural equilibrium, and whatever's my equilibrium is not your equilibrium. And I think when people start talking about the word balance, it sort of makes their objective, you know, and it really should be a subjective experience. So a lot of what I talk about is the fact that there's no such thing as balance. So if somebody feels inclined, for example, part of the anxiety is stressing. People are stressed out and trying to live a balanced life. It's not going to happen. You know, there are certain things that are not equal in value. You know, you can never measure your family against your work. It's just they're not the same in value. Exactly. Right. So so I'm always telling people, you know, if you in fact have the urge or you're compelled to work 10 hours, work 10 hours. If you're compelled to be at your house for 10 hours, be at your house for 10 hours. Your body has a way of going through that pendulum, and it'll find its own equilibrium. When people start getting hysterical about should and shouldn'ts and questioning their natural guidance is when resistance occurs, when anxiety occurs, when fatigue occurs. You have to let yourself ride those things out. You know, so I guess if taking the opportunity to be here, if I could relay a message, it would be like, there's no such thing as balance.
That's kind of relieving to hear, because
In my opinion, in my experience, you know, I'm not the end all be all, but it's
Right.
been my 11 years of experience that it's
That's
there's an equilibrium, and I would replace the word equilibrium with the word balance.
so you need to find what's right for you.
For
what's
you.
going to work for you. Now, if someone's going through Reiki treatment, is there anything else they should pay attention to, like their sleeping patterns or diet or other things that would help them?
One thing that I ask people to do is really, mood swings are common sometimes, you know, just observe themselves. I ask that people don't judge their behavior, but just to sort of observe themselves, because sometimes things are unfolded, you know. Dreams are important, you know, there's a lot of information, intuition, you know, inclination, natural inclination, you know, stuff, things that people notice, coincidences, you know, that's what I ask. That's what I ask people to look at,
Okay.
you know, or the same things that seem to keep coming up in their life patterns.
Okay. The other question I had was, you mentioned energy earlier and the concept of energy. Could you expand a little bit more? Because I feel like people throw the term around, excuse me, and how do you define it as a Reiki master?
Energy would be, how would I define energy? Gosh, we're all made up of energy. And it has, you know, you could define it in so many different ways. Your auras, your energy, chakras are energy. They're a part of us, and they're part of everything that is, in our relationship to everything that is. And there are different forms of energy.
So can we, so we can change our energy? Do we ever
Absolutely, by
give
intent.
off our energy?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
Or is it all
energy, we're constantly exuding energy. And there are ways to control our energy and to draw things to us on an energetic level. You know, Dr. Linder, who has she, I think, summarized it best on Deborah's wall at Healing Quest, when she talks about the fact that energy follows thought. It's very true. And it does. You know, actually, we can go into Bell's theorem and atoms and splitting of atoms, but we're all made up of particles. You know, I mean, if you're talking about the molecular structure of our body. But it's sort of a difficult thing to quantify. But in Reiki specifically, it's talking about the intent of the energy. You know, we have, your chakras are made up of energy, you know, and they have certain functions. So there are different forms of energy, definitely.
So when a person comes in a room and you can just, it feels cold, or if someone comes in and has a great presence, is that their energy?
It is their
preceded
energy.
by their intent?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
exactly.
very interesting.
Well, that's what gets interesting. You can intend it or you cannot intend it. You know, but you can surpass certain things by your intent. I don't know if I'm getting very
So
existential
what do you mean by
right here.
non-intend? Where does
if
it come
somebody's
from?
just like,
They don't realize.
the intent would be your conscious mind.
Right.
So let's say if somebody comes into a room and they're angry, you know, you can kind of see it. You know, you're sort of drawn to that person and they're visibly like upset, and you're wondering, you know, what's going on. Maybe I shouldn't approach that person if you have a question for them. Might not be the best timing. It's sort of the same way. I mean, body language. There's so many things that can, by the naked eye, untrained eye, if you will, untrained in this art form, you can sense, you can read people's body language. You know. It's the same that's applied. When you're intending to be kind, you know, it's a conscious thought, even if you're really angry. You know, that would be the way of surpassing your natural state.
Now, say someone comes in and they do have negative energy. A lot of times you feel like you can pick this up. Or is there any way you can protect yourself or help their energy?
Part of being trained is that there is a series of things that you have to go through where you do not intermix your energy with the person. And negative energy, the only time that it's negative energy is when it's depleting that person. You know, everything has a function. So the terms sort of get a little different.
Okay. So just as like an average Joe, though, if we want to protect ourselves, is there any kind of visualization?
Oh, what I tell people to do, I just, in my experience, the way I was trained is just sort of a white light.
Think of a white light?
Yeah, just kind of like put yourself in a bubble, a positive bubble. type thing. You know, that's one way that you could kind of cocoon yourself from negative energy.
That's very interesting. How fun. So how did you get involved in Reiki? How did you meet the woman that trained you?
I was introduced through a friend. You know, I was young, so I was introduced through a friend, and then I guess that's how I met her. I was 16, so it's kind of like, you know, when the students, the teacher appears type thing. So it made a lot of sense to me at the time.
Where did you grow up?
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Was this in Ann Arbor then? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
I was gonna say, so is the woman still in Ann Arbor? Do you still?
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Yeah, she's still in Ann Arbor, and I still talk to her. Yeah, she's her name is Alana Gillespie.
Now, say you want to have Reiki done to yourself. Can you perform on yourself, or do
Part of being trained is learning how to hear yourself first.
Okay.
So part of that is, you know, the basic. You know, level 1 is more deals with like healing oneself. Level 2 is distant healing, healing others, and 3 is when you start getting into your mastership level, and so on.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the functions kind of in conjunction with chakras. How do the functions differ? Can we get a little bit more into that?
Absolutely. For example, your throat is different from your heart. I mean, just obviously, and then also the function of your chakra. Your throat chakra is associated with sort of to thine own self be true, speaking one's truth. And the other is your heart chakra, which is your emotional relationships, we'll say. So they have different functions. And a lot of time, if your heart chakra is not functioning in its most optimal form, your throat chakra, because you're sort of projecting your truth about the situation.
You'll feel it in your throat chakra?
You'll feel it in your throat. And somebody who has a closed throat chakra, the first, you know, you start kind of backtracking. The first thing that might be assessed is the fact that they aren't able to speak truthfully for whatever reasons to themselves, about themselves. They cannot express themselves in their environment. It could be many different variables.
So I imagine you do a lot of counseling with these
absolutely.
therapies to help people get at the root.
Counseling and
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming with us. It's been wonderful
Lisa.
to learn all about Reiki. And you can reach Margaret at 312-664-7979 or get more information on her at www.healingquestcenter.com.
Thanks, Lisa.
Okay.